Start with a sort of a personal angle. So when I first came to Portugal, I was 10. My father brought me to Lisbon to see the Naval Museum. And ever since then, Vasco da Gama has been, and I remember seeing all the old boats and the cannons and stuff. I was so impressed by it that when one of my sons turned 10, I brought him back to the same place. So it's etched in my mind. And I think it's a good place to start because people like Vasco da Gama, he established the sort of the network, if you like, that laid the ground for globalization, big trade networks connecting Europe with India, other parts of the world. And globalization developed much later on the back of that. Globalization, to my mind, is the integration and the interdependence of countries and companies. Some of those countries have to sacrifice their sovereignty to participate in globalization. Brexit has actually done the opposite. They're participating less in trade and they're taking back some sovereignty. And it's also a world where you see more and more commoditization, where the price of things begins to equalize out. And you get flows, lots of flows of finance, of goods, and importantly, in my view, of ideas and people as well. And we've already had one big period of globalization in world history from 1870 to about 1913. And if you look at the quote here from John Maynard Keynes, one of the most famous economists, I think it's brilliant because when I read this, I could see him in bed with his iPad, buying and selling shares, ordering commodities, shopping on Amazon. So the first wave of globalization, which was a very, very powerful one, which was led, I guess, by the British Empire, this one's led by the American Empire, was actually very much like our own. And what's interesting is that it ended very, very badly. Financial catastrophe, the World War, nationalism, populist politics, and then followed by the Great Depression. And I don't think that that's going to happen this time around, thankfully. And I think there is a problem that when people talk about the end of globalization, people assume you mean that we're going to have a kind of a 1912, 1914 type scenario. And I don't think that's the case. But there is a powerful lesson. The other lesson, and the reason I found myself talking about globalization, is that my own country, which actually is not completely unlike Portugal in that it's one of the smaller countries in Europe. I mean, in Ireland, we had a period of a long period of economic underperformance up to about the 1990s. And then suddenly something happened. The economy took off. And it took off because the seeds and the ingredients of globalization, big companies, financial links, etc., really began to drive the economy. And Ireland went from as the Economist said, the poorest of the poor to the Celtic tiger, and then everything collapsed and it's bounced back again, and we're kind of just beginning to get a handle on it. And in 2006, I wrote a book called Ireland and the Global Question, which is, how does a small country manage globalization? And then 5 years later, when we had the collapse of our economy, myself and a friend wrote a book, the title of which was What Did We Do Right? Just trying to find, was there anything good that globalization came out of it? So the lesson I think that we should bear in mind, and particularly with Portugal in mind, is globalization is a powerful force and it needs to be harnessed. And one of the reasons that globalization has run out of steam and why you've got populists attacking it is that it has bred inequalities and it has bred side effects. Climate damage, indebtedness are the two really big ones. If you look at the States, what that chart shows you that the share of GDP that corporates get and the share of GDP that workers get. And you can see that there's an extreme divide. So basically, Wall Street has got all the benefits of globalization. The CEOs, the executives, the shareholders of Apple and Microsoft have got all the benefits. And then people living and working in Pittsburgh have got nothing. And that's one of the reasons Trump was elected and why populism is rife in American politics. Globalization, I think, has also bred side effects, and they've come to undermine it. My point to you is that it doesn't have to be like that. if you look at the countries